Welcome back. Welcome back to Living in Mexico. I'm Ana Maria Salazar. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. One of the there, one of the um, one of the I don't know if to call it news or one of the headlines this week had to do, or the last 2 weeks had to do with the Mexican government's reaction and rejection to recommendations made by a group of advisors to the United Nations in regards to the disappearances in Mexico. Now, this happens also at a moment where the Mexican government, the president, Claudia Sheinbaum, had during the morning press conference basically revised the numbers of the disappeared in Mexico. And I say revised because they kind of reclassified the different people that are in the database of the disappeared in Mexico. So immediately after that press conference, the UN Committee on Enforced Disappearances formally requested that the UN Secretary General refer Mexico's disappearance crisis to the United Nations General Assembly for consideration of international support measures. Not to say whether, Mexico is guilty or not, or whether Mexico has a policy to promote the disappearances in Mexico. No, basically, they want the General Assembly to consider and to vote on whether Mexico needs international support measures in regards to the disappeared. Now, this is an extraordinary step under Article 34 of the International Convention on Enforced Disappearances, used only when a situation appears to be, to involve widespread or systematic disappearances. Joining us to talk about this extraordinary recommendation made to the United Nations and the very worrisome reaction by the Mexican government is Emilio Avarez Icaza. Those of you who've been following us throughout the years know him well. He is a former senator, independent senator, who used to join us quite frequently here on the show. But at one point, he has a lot of experience in human rights issue. He was on I believe, am I wrong? The Inter-American Human Rights Commission. Emilio, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Ana Maria. Really, really nice to be with you again.
Could you just walk us through why this is happening, why this is such an important step, and help us understand Mexico's reaction to these recommendations?
Mexico as a country is living such a big crisis related to disappearances in both extremes, disappearances and forced disappearances.
So let me just stop you there. Disappearances and forced disappearances. And it's very important to differentiate those two concepts, right? Could you help us understand that?
The second one is an activity related with governmental authorities, armed forces, policemen, different security forces. And the first one is more when there is different activities. But the convention in this matter, which is the Convention Against Forced Disappearances, considering three different ways of understanding the forced disappearances. When there is a governmental authority involved, when there is an omission, or when there is certain kind of acceptances, that means the government that led the particular, they allowed
people to be disappeared.
Exactly. That it's a key element in the Mexican case, because the public register until now talking about more than 130,000. There is no such a parallel process as the Mexican crisis. Let me give you a figure. During the Argentinian dictatorship, the historic records talk about 30,000 disappearances at that time. So we are talking 4 times that and more. So it's such a big crisis. And the big numbers exploded after the Felipe Calderón administration, later on during Peña, and specifically, Ana Maria, during López Obrador administration, because a consequence of this policy, abrazos y no balazos, hugs and no bullets, if we can say so.
Right. That's such a
number,
silly phrase.
yes,
Hugs and no bullets. That's
yes,
the
it's
silliest thing I've
and
you know,
the
I've kept on
numbers
saying that throughout the years. Yeah.
increases as never before. And
Mhm.
during the Sheinbaum administration, that administration continues in the highest numbers of López Obrador. The SED, which is the Committee Against Enforcement Disappearances, which is a treaty body of United Nations, as you mentioned, is been following Mexico since 2012. It's going to be near 15 years, Ana Maria, 15 years. Visits in Mexico, reports, meetings with the government. So talking about that there is no context, it is not only not precise, it's a lie. Because
so that because that's basically what they said. And
yeah,
there was three different reactions from Mexican government. One from the presidency, President Claudia Sheinbaum reacted it, then the Secretary of Gobernación, and then also the new canciller, the new Secretary of Foreign Relations for Mexico, who was sworn in also this week. So the three reactions basically, if I understand correctly, are saying one, that that this committee or this commission for the forced disappearances had no jurisdiction, and that the United Nations has no jurisdiction. That was kind of one of their arguments. Two, that they don't have enough information, or they don't understand the steps that Mexico has been taking to try to reduce the number of disappearances. And three, they basically said that because Mexico this government does not have a policy of forced disappearance. It's not, it's not a policy, then therefore they should not be investigated. Is those are their three arguments. Is that correct?
Yes, and the third one is related, something that they call technical discussion, the consideration of the committee about the concept of forced disappearances in Mexico. Because now the committee is saying that Mexico is living such a structural problem in this matter that is considered crimes against humanity. And that's something that Mexico's government is really worried, because that opens the door for the international justice as the international court based in Den Haag.
So they're talking about that means that they would go against individuals, right?
It could be. It could be.
Yeah. So they not only would the International Criminal Court go against the country, but the International Criminal Court could potentially go against individuals. But are we talking about? Is that possible?
It could be, and in both extremes, Mexico's reaction it's the worst reaction. It's a kind of putting Mexico in the club of the denial club, which means Cuba and all dark side, if we can say so.
All those countries like Cuba who denied, forced disappearances and a policy.
China and
Nicaragua,
exactly.
Iran, China. Okay. So Mexico's putting themselves in that basket.
Exactly. So for the Western, the conception of Western, Europe, Canada, United States, there's what's going on with Mexico. Right. You used to be a Latin American leader in the good side of human rights. And now you are putting yourself in the dark side, first. Second one, you are talking about something that is already known for the international community. So what is happening in disappearances is not something that the international community do not know, especially after Ayotzinapa in 2014-15. So the country is already flagged with this structural matter, and everybody's expecting that the Mexican government is leading and acceptance this kind of reports, so the international cooperation will help Mexico. So they all, another time, they think that denying the case, denying this report is the kind of best answer. And in this consideration, the problem increases really large.
You know, I mean, the numbers are outstanding. I mean, outrageous, catastrophic. I don't even know what adjective to use. We're talking about more than 130,000 people disappeared. But in the worst case scenario, with this way that they restructured this database, we're talking about at least 42,000 that are documented. Because
Yes.
the others, they claim the others are probably alive or they're not really disappeared. And 42,000, there's just simply not enough information to allow for any investigation. But let's just focus on these 43,000 that the government accepts. That's a huge number. I mean, is there any other place around the world where you have 40?
Just in places where armed conflicts, as Syria, or some other places in Africa or Asia. So, but regarding a formal democracy, there is not any comparison with Mexico regarding. No? So that is the problem, Ana Maria.
So what they're accusing the Mexican government is not of a policy to promote forced disappearance, but basically negligence, right? That they know that disappearances are taking place and that it has become a structural problem, an endemic problem, and that the Mexican government has not done sufficient to stop the disappearances, even though they have the information that is happening. Correct? Is that kind of
that's correct? And the idea of that public officials, those in security, are not involved, it is not true. Let me just remark two cases. The very famous case in Tabasco with Hernan Bermudez. He used to be the Secretary of Public Security in Tabasco. He was leading.
He is the Secretary of Public Security for Senator and for former Senator, very close ally of the former president Manuel López Obrador, and also he wanted to be a presidential candidate. And he headed Morena in the Senate, Adán Augusto. So I mean,
Ana Maria, 3 days ago, they said they opened a case against Bermudez because of disappearances in Tabasco.
Right.
And he was the Secretary of Public Security in Tabasco.
Right.
And the second one is what the Human Rights Committee in Nuevo Laredo presented regarding 32 cases of disappearances with members of the Marine Corps in those cases. Right. So it is not a policy, yes, but the problem is there are so many elements of public security or armed forces involved, and mainly the structural impunity. There are more than 130,000 and less than 50 people judged because of disappearances in Mexico.
Tried. There's nobody's tried. Nobody is prosecuted.
Exactly.
Nobody goes to jail because they're participating in the disappearance. And of course, the most recent cases, which I don't think is reflected in the report, is all these recruitment by organized crime.
Exactly.
That the government knows about. They know it was taking place. And then suddenly you have these mass graves in the state of Jalisco that are all related to this massive recruitment by organized crime.
Izaguirre.
Right.
No?
And so I guess the issue here is what happens now. So clearly the Mexican government's what they should have done is say, we need help, come in, tell us what we should do. And
absolutely.
I think that would have been the best thing even for this president, because basically she could even politically, is she afraid that if the international community comes in, that the former president is going to be accused of a series of I mean, because so many people disappeared under his administration.
I think, Ana Maria,
that he's going to be accused and have to face
that's one of the reasons.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons of the Claudia Sheinbaum's answer, because they're trying to block, cancel, or protect as much as possible. It is not a scenario nowadays, but it could be if the International Court of Justice decides to open a case in Mexico. And there are several human rights organizations, and those call it colectivos de buscadoras, mothers looking for their
Mothers
family.
of the disappeared, I guess.
Exactly.
Mothers of the
Exactly.
disappeared, yeah.
They are trying to push the International Court for the last 10 years to open a case. So if a treaty body as this committee in the United Nations says that there is a structural crime against humanity, that's why they turn on the red lights, Ana Maria.
So what's going to happen now? This is going to just kind of can you just walk us through this process?
Yes.
Now, we know what the Mexican government's position is. In fact, the human rights ombudsman, she came out and said, how dare the United Nations? I mean, it was insane. How dare the United Nations accuse our president, our government of the transformation of disappearances? And then you have, the mayor of Mexico City coming out and saying, how dare, I mean, everybody's going out and protecting the president and this government. It's insane. But
Absolutely.
What happens now?
The case of the National Commission is so insane because the one who is leading the commission, Rosario Ibarra, she herself, she has a brother who has been disappearing in the dirty war in Mexico during the 70s. She herself.
She is a victim. She's
a victim. Her mother went to UN, knocking the door saying, I need your help. So that's why it's so insane. But well, what will happen is that the committee asked the General Secretariat in UN to add this matter in the next General Assembly that will take in place in September. So the Mexican case, by the very first time, there are no other state with a similar situation as Mexico now. It's going to be presented in next September in the next General Assembly, the particular case of this report. So the committee will come out with certain recommendations. And if the Mexican government is smart enough, they will negotiate some kind of help regarding this structural problem. And in September, they could say, okay, UN will bring as much as technical support and judicial support, financial support as needed. If Mexico keeps going in the refusal, it keeps going on the way of denying everything.
Refuse mode, that they deny anything is going on. What's going to happen? So
there will be such a big debate, and it could be outgoing with the General Assembly says a resolution, and Mexico takes it as a resolution against Mexico, which is another scenario.
But if that happens, if they come out with a resolution against Mexico, what does that? And this could take years, right? I mean, this is not. I mean, the debate starts in September. I mean, but is this going to happen immediately by next year? We're going to have decisions, or in the next months? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out the timetable of this.
I mean, looking the size of the problem that Mexico is having, Claudia Sheinbaum will be very smart if she accepts that
the recommendations.
Yes, that recommendations, because she has 4 years more to go in her government.
Right.
And supporting the advice and the technical assistance of UN at this time, that will be something very important, because Mexico is in this very critical moment of UN saying multilateralism is useful. And we need this kind of assistance. So it's not only a question regarding the separations in Mexico. It's a matter relating the sense and the utility and the objective of the United Nations. And Mexico will use this case as a frame regarding what is going on with the United States and the bilateral relation, and also in the international context. So Mexico will have a lot of moral authority in the international scenario, acceptance of those recommendations. If Mexico coming out attacking those, we will lose an extraordinary opportunity to set up a new time for the multilateralism and United Nations.
But at this point, it doesn't seem that the president really cares about that. I mean, I think for
Yeah.
some reason, she's made a decision that the United Nations coming to Mexico is going to be perceived as a violation of Mexican sovereignty. For some reason, they perceive this as a political threat in many ways. I mean, it's politically, it could damage her or the former president or the movement. And I think she's also considering Mexico does not have a lot of friends out there. I mean, there's not a lot of countries in the United Nations that would vote or defend Mexico, including the United States, because I have no idea. I mean, who is the United States to even be talking about this right now? But I don't think she has allies, or Mexico has allies that would come and say, let's defend Mexico, right? Or the allies that she has would be Cuba, I don't know.
Nicaragua, Venezuela.
Maybe. So, and even the Europeans, I mean, they very rare, I mean, just recently I've reestablished a relationship with the Spanish government, which is a government that you would expect that would defend Mexico, right? But she's going to be traveling to Spain in next week. So what is the worst case scenario then?
Mexico, in the last 7 years, is been destroying the relationship in their neighborhood. We are really alone in Latin America. Mexico has been fighting with Europe, with Canada, and United States. So there are just a few allies. No? And Mexico used to be well known as a very good diplomacy, politics, and team. The reputation of the Mexican diplomacy used to be very high.
Right. No, yeah.
But not anymore. And it's also happening because the Mexican government decides to appoint ambassadors coming not from the professional
career ambassadors.
Career ambassadors. They are appointed political.
They're political appointments.
And that is a very important change. At this time, when we need this support, is the time to pay the bill of those absurd conflicts, positions with Spain. We broke relations with Latin American countries, Ana Maria, with Ecuador, with Bolivia, with Peru, even in dictatorship times. Mexico just broke relations with Chile.
Right.
I'm talking about Pinochet, Ana Maria.
Right.
And we were this close to broke relations with Panama.
Right.
And the Mexican government fights with the European Union, with Spain, with England, without talking about Ukraine. I mean, we are paying the bill of the last 7 years in a disastrous international policy.
Let me ask you one last question. Regardless of what what may come out of the United Nations or the recommendations, what needs to happen in Mexico? I mean, what if, the Mexican government realized, not only we need to politically accept advice from and help from the United Nations experts, but maybe recognize that there is a problem of disappearances in Mexico and that they have some responsibility. I mean, what could the United Nations experts recommend, and what should Mexico be doing to dramatically reduce the disappearances in this country?
The main two focus are what is going on with the fiscalías, which is the attorneys.
The Attorney General's office, yeah.
That's what it is, the main focus. And the second one is the problem of those officials related with the narco. So in both hands.
About there has been links with military. Well, there has been links with governors, links of municipal police, state police.
So those extremes related, the Attorney General offices at the local and the federal level, and the relation between authorities and narcos are the main reasons why these numbers are so high. So that means,
you know what's so surprising, that in this document, they don't talk about the military. It doesn't seem that the military is the problem. You know, it's just, you know, the military is you know, in all of the human rights reports around the world, the military has always been the focus of these investigations. And in this case, what is so interesting is that the focus of the investigation is not the military. It's the incapacity or the incapacity of the Mexican government.
that's
or
why
the willingness of the Mexican government to stop this process of disappearances.
the committee is talking about a structural matter. That's why, because there are just 15 years of following and nothing really changed. There are laws, there are institutions, there are kind of public policy, but numbers increasing. Tell me why? Because of the impunity, because this structural matter.
Lack of political will. Because at
Absolutely.
the end of the day, that comes down to leadership and political will.
Absolutely.
Well, you know, Emilio, thank you so much for joining us. Just remind our audience, what are you doing right now? I know you are working on a new party, right?
Yes, we are promoting Somos Mexico. I'm part of those people who do not feel represented. I'm part of those people that is really worried about what's going on democracy and human rights in Mexico. And I don't want to see how Mexico is burning. No, I prefer to put my experience and my hope to try to change this.
And it's a new party, and the name of the party is, which it looks like it's going to be officialized. I mean, the process.
Yes, we're in the middle of that process. The name is Somos Mexico. Okay. We are Mexico.
Well, hopefully the next time we have this conversation, you'll come back as a representative of a new party in Mexico for the next electoral process, which the next elections, midterm elections, which are next year. Somos Mexico. So I hope to talk to you soon. Thank you so much for joining us, Emilio.
Thank you, Ana Maria. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. We're gonna go to a break. I'm Ana Maria Salazar. Thank you so much for joining us here and Living in Mexico. We'll be back.
Nos vemos pronto.
Nos vemos.
Chao.